Can a Christian get tattoos? Many will say no, and to back up their claim, they will refer to Leviticus 19:28, which reads, "Ye shall not make any cuttings into your flesh for the dead, nor print any marks upon you. I am the Lord." So is it sinful for a Christian to get tattoos? Well, I think this verse has been simply taken out of context. You see, this verse was talking about a group of pagans who would cut marks on their bodies as a way of mourning for the dead. It was a cultic practice that God didn't want his people to be participating in because he is Lord over all things. God wanted his people to be set apart from the worldly customs and instead focused on him. Now, just because this verse has been taken out of context, it is still important that we understand the impact of tattoos, because tattoos, in a sense, define who we are. And depending on what kind of tattoo we get will result in the way people will look at us. So it is important to be very careful in making that decision. Now, before you ever consider getting a tattoo, there are many things that you should think about. And the biggest thing to think about would obviously be the kind of tattoo. It is important to think long and hard on this before you make that decision, because as soon as you make that decision, it is permanent. So before you ever get a tattoo, you want to think about things that describe who you are and your story. A tattoo that tells a story is probably the best kind of tattoo, because no matter what, that story will always stick with you. For example, it could be a church that you went to when you were little, because I myself have a tattoo of just that. When I was little, probably before I ever was in school, I went to a church called New Hope Methodist, and just recently I got a tattoo of the Methodist cross. So my tattoo is telling a story of me going to a Methodist church. So if you ever consider getting a tattoo, consider a tattoo that tells a story about you. And another thing to think about is why you are getting the tattoo. There could be multiple reasons why you might get a tattoo, but a wrong reason to get one is to try to look cool. Because if you're a Christian, you should not be trying to impress other people. If your reason for getting a tattoo is to impress a girl or a guy you like, then you should probably not get a tattoo at all. Because trying to impress other people with a tattoo is simply a waste of time, in my opinion, and it's just going to stick with you for the rest of your life. So I would highly not recommend getting a tattoo just to impress people. Now, on the other hand, having things that you value and turning it into artwork is a good reason to get one. And this also goes back to what I said about turning your life stories into tattoos, because this is why most people should get tattoos in the first place, is because of something that they value or a story in their life that gives them meaning. Now, the final thing I want to look at is what Paul tells us in 1 Corinthians 6:19, which says, "Do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your body." We have to remember that we are God's handiwork, created to do great things, and that we also have to remember who we are. We have to think before we do something to ourselves, because not everything may be beneficial. And because God created us, whatever we decide to do to ourselves should not be for our own self-pleasures, but for God's glory only.